What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Dynasty Dumbies, your home for the latest and greatest in college football news and action. We're your hosts, Hunter and Tony. We have a bunch of great storylines and a really in-depth view at our rankings this week to get into. So we want to kick off with some of the leading storylines coming out of this weekend. Want to lead off with Sam Pittman is out as Arkansas's head coach, served full years, and finished with a 32-34 record and 3 bowl wins.
Yeah, this was one of those things that we kind of just saw coming, the way that Arkansas was playing. It just seemed like it was a matter of time with this one. Might have been a little surprised that it took this long, maybe, but after just getting the breaks beaten off them, it was just a matter of time. So not necessarily surprised by this. You know, you never like to see this sort of stuff, but in today's day and age, teams and athletic directors, they expect results, and you got to be able to put them on the field to keep your job now. So tough luck for him, but I feel like, he'll probably find something elsewhere with a bunch of other openings and whatnot. So
He'll land on his feet. He's a great coach. I've always liked Pittman. However, he just wasn't, like you said, winning's the key to everything, and he had not done enough winning at Arkansas. I did think maybe he deserved to finish the year out, but I'm not going to get too far into that. But I think the most interesting from this is that their former head coach and their current offensive coordinator, Bobby Petrino, is now the new interim head coach, and he's already said that he wants to gun for the full-time position next year, which, if you don't know a little bit about Bobby Petrino, he used to be the head coach back in the day. Some off-the-field incidents occurred with a motorcycle wreck, and he then left Arkansas, but now he's back, so I think that's going to be interesting to watch, more so for this coming offseason when Arkansas actually is looking to replace Sam Pittman.
We'll have to just wait and see. I mean, with these teams that are firing all their coaches recently, a bunch of interns are stepping up, and, nobody's going to make any rash decisions on who's going to come in and whatnot until they get a full off season. So it's just a matter of time. They're just going to probably try to, they're hoping to hit sim to next season as quick as they can, because they just want to get it figured out quicker. But moving on to this next one here, we want to kind of just bring back up, we had talked about in an earlier episode about the targeting rule, still not really making sense. Some questionable calls, the whole opinionated thing and how it goes. It's so hard to understand what is and isn't targeting now, and it's just way too subjective with these refs. My biggest gripe was the Penn State Oregon one. I mean, it looked pretty much dead on targeting, in my opinion. I mean, whether or not, they're saying, oh, the hairline, he was an established runner, he wasn't defenseless. I think he was defenseless realistically. He's getting tackled, he's going down to the ground. I don't know how much more defenseless you can get other than that. There's not really much you can do when you're wrapped up and going to the ground. And just leading with the head in any shape or form, regardless of if it's the crown, the hairline, and whatnot, when you make that helmet-to-helmet contact, in my opinion, that usually should be and usually is considered targeting. But for some reason, I think purely because they didn't perceive him as defenseless and he was an established runner, it just makes it all go away for some reason.
Targeting is just one of those things where it has become so subjective. I don't even understand what is and isn't targeting at this point. Because in that same stretch of time with the Penn State call that you were talking about, I was watching both that and the Bama-Georgia game. And in the Bama-Georgia game, a few minutes before the Penn State one occurred, there was a call that felt like a really bad targeting call. Not a bad targeting call, but a call that was targeting it was a targeting call on the field, but I didn't think it was a great flag. And I actually wrote it in my notes for this episode to mention this. And then as I'm typing them out, my notes, I watched the Penn State one take place, and it just was a complete head case of how was this one in the Bama-Georgia game where it felt like truly just runners meeting each other and having an accidental clash of heads to that's targeting, but the Penn State one, which I thought was way more textbook, is unlikely to be targeting it. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's just so hard for defenders to truly aim where their head is at times as well in a bang bang sport like football.
It's the hardest thing now to play defense in football, especially on the college level with this the targeting rule where, one simple mistake, you're ejected, you're, suspended for a game possibly or worse, and it just leads to a lot of dysfunction and controversy, and you never want to see it. It's really hard on these players, and especially when half of them, playing with their life on the line and their future on the line, and one small mistake just ruins it. It's rough, and you hate to see it, but it's part of the game now, and you'd think there would be a little more understanding on it, but I think the more and more it goes, the more and more there's a less understanding on it.
I could not agree more. I really have a gripe with the ejection part of the rule. If you want to throw the 15-yard flag, sure, but I think the ejection just too much, especially when it's in the second half and it carries over to the next game. Most of the time, there's hardly plays where players truly mean to lead with the head or helmet. There's definitely cases to be made where it is used as a weapon, but I feel like most of these are accidental or incidental. So ejecting a player and punishing them to that extreme, I think, is just too much for the rule, especially with the wishy-washiness of it. And if you're going to call it defensively, it can be called offensively too. There's plenty of players that lower their head, like Cam Scatabo, helmet right into the chest, that you could say is leading with the crown of the helmet.
Absolutely. I mean, it feels like it's very skewed towards the defensive play and the defensive side of the ball, like exactly what you said, where the offense could very much be called for it all the time. I mean, especially running backs when they're fighting for those extra yards, where they just head down, charging for it, trying to get that hit, and why is that not considered it? And you're leading with the crown, you're opening yourself for it, which makes it harder on the defenders to make the tackles. So, and I mean, we just know with today's day and age where it's an offensive football game now, where a lot of stuff is catered to the offense, makes it super hard on the defense. But maybe it can, hopefully soon find some closer middle ground where it can be a little more consistent. But it's going to come down to the refs because, like you said, it's up to them majority of the time. So
exactly. I don't think that there'll ever be a happy soul, or every soul will be happy with the targeting rule. I think it's just too subjective. It's a difficult rule to enforce. But looking past the targeting rules, jumping into some of the games of the week, wanted to start out with what we thought was the game of the week and the upset of the week when UVA hosted Florida State and took them down in double overtime, 46-38. And even as a UVA hater, I have to admit they pulled off probably the greatest field storming ever witnessed in college football.
Very electric out of Charlottesville there. I mean, I was watching it, and as soon as that ball was thrown and ruled incomplete, I mean, not even a half second to think that people were already on their way onto the field, and it was just absurd. It's great to see that. You love to see that sort of connection with the team, and I know for a fact that majority of the game you were saying that it wasn't a great crowd per se. Besides the student section, the student section lived up to the hype.
Student section showed up.
Yeah, they were there to cheer on their team against a ranked opponent, and it showed with that storm fielding, just storming it. So but the question is now, is that the field storm that gets them all banned?
It's not great for field storming because it highlights exactly why we love college football games on campus, and is the prime example in the same talk of why they should be banned, because it was like a tsunami of bodies hitting the field. Squirrel White, the Florida State wide receiver, I mean, instantly, I know our group chat blew up with, is Squirrel White alive? Because he just got buried. Luckily he is. No
Poor
players
guy.
were injured. There was essentially a mass casualty event determined in Charlottesville, which does not mean any deaths, but there was 16 reported injuries because of the field storming. It was very aggressive, and it's going to be the key reason why more and more bodies of legislature try to get this banned for the safety reasons. But I think it's what kind of makes college football so great to have that level of love.
It makes it so electric. I mean, you could just tell from the get-go, like as soon into overtime, knowing FSU needed to score, all of those students were itching. They were just waiting for that one moment where the game was 100% over and they were gone. And and I love it. It brings the passion. It shows it. Like you said, it's a big reason why games should be held on campuses and not these stupid neutral grounds.
There's nothing worse than a college game on a neutral ground. There's just nothing
it's
worse.
horrible, and that's, I think that bred and wrongfully brought in the conversation of your stupid hypotheticals of neutral field sort of stuff. But
exactly,
keep games on campuses. It makes them more fun. Field stormings are fun, albeit when they're done right and not stupidly. Like the stupid kid that just immediately goes to Tommy Castellanos and just immediately is flipping him off.
Yeah, you won the game. You can't be doing that.
Like I understand the competitive nature. Like I understand it, but it's not like that dude You didn't play on the field. You're on the field illegally, technically. So like,
you didn't play a single snap. You have no business getting up in their face and flicking them off.
You had nothing to do with that game other than bringing the noise, which was great. Yeah, but Tommy played a great game, I thought. So it's not like he didn't do his job.
Yeah,
so
it just be smarter, not dumber.
Yeah, it was just a great game overall. But another thing that we wanted to note is another hypothetical win for the SEC, where an SEC burner account on Twitter is saying that if an SEC school has a hill with direct access to the field, it would have been 10 times more insane / worse. Again, hypothetical.
SEC.
If that's what you want your claim to fame to be, is that our field stormings would have been better, then you know what, you can take it, because good on you if you want to try and hurt players. I mean, I think that's the thing that would come out of it, is that an SEC team, if that happened to them, that somehow a player would get hurt. So because those fans
I don't understand why
insane.
You got to compare things like this.
Like,
what are you gonna do? It's another
stick to results. Yeah, stick to
the
the results on the field, and then you can talk about the other stuff. But there's no reason for it to be brought up. It's ridiculous. I mean, It was a really cool moment, and yet again, the SEC tries to make it about them, per usual. So
no surprises.
If we want to do that, you could say a lot more about the what ifs and whatnot and stuff. And we're starting to see some of it, because there was the whole what if of other teams started paying players, and now they all can, and everyone's catching up. So. But moving on about more into the game, about the biggest two big things that came out of it. The thing that I think irked me the most was the controversy with UVA's coach not understanding the rules of overtime, throwing out his field goal unit in the second overtime when you have to go for 2, and the play clock was not ticking. It was not going, or they reset it, and in my opinion, wrong. That is outright wrong. You cannot stop the play clock to explain the rules to a coach who's supposed to know the rules.
UVA should have been forced. They should have had to have taken a timeout or had to delay a game. Instead, that play clock resets to 25 seconds, and they're able to get their two-point conversion play in and their team out there with no penalty, which is just absurd. I don't understand how that was missed. I do think ultimately it didn't matter as much, though, because FSU, even with the 2-point conversion, FSU needed to score a touchdown, which they failed to do. Although I think the second controversial thing was that the play in the end zone for FSU on the third down, it was ruled a catch on the field. If you didn't see it, it was just a little seam up the sideline. FSU's wide receiver catches it initially, bobbles it, and then looked to regain possession with a toe in bounds before stepping out. Upon replay, it was overturned and ruled incomplete. I personally thought that this was a catch. I thought the replay just took so long, and if you take 10 minutes to review something, you have not found conclusive evidence to overturn it, in my opinion. I'm not a fan of the super slow-mo where you're going to see every little movement of the ball. I just think it's a little absurd, that level of replay. If you're going to review it for that long, it's clearly not conclusive, in my opinion.
100%. I mean, in my opinion, first look, real time. I mean, I thought he immediately caught it, and then next thing you know, I see the ball pop up. But then I thought he regained possession in real time, watching the play. And then, like you said, going into the super slow mo, of course, everything is going to look different. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with targeting. When you look at it in super slow mo, it's going to look different.
Exactly.
And you could say that with any form of replay for anything that has to be reviewed and looked at. Super slow-mo makes everything look either 100 times worse, 100 times better. And like you said, with it taking that long, replay is there to fix the obvious misses. Like, if obviously a player gets a second foot down or a first foot down in college where they had possession, then cool. It was I missed that, whatever, it's good. And this is what we see in the NFL now, where they have replay assistants where they don't have to spend as much time on those smaller stuff. They just have someone in their ear saying, hey, you missed it, it's a first down or it's a catch. And they just go, oh, replay assistant said first down or a catch, we move on. It's like, all right, cool, we got it figured out. And it's the same thing with soccer now with VAR, where they spend these time, it's for your clear and obvious errors. And it should be the same thing in football in general, where if it's a clear and obvious error that you can find and point out, sure, but it shouldn't take 5-10 minutes. If you have to sit there and go through every single frame, if you have to go through frame by frame to see when he had possession, if he had possession, and if his foot was in bounds, then it's not obvious enough. It has to be that full conclusive evidence. And if they can't find it, you have to uphold what's on the field. That's why they changed the terminology of upheld and confirmed in college, where now it's just upheld. There's no confirmed, there's no nothing else. It's either reversed or overturned and upheld. That's it. Because they can't really confirm it much anymore. But like you said, with the conclusive and non-conclusive, it has to be obvious, in my opinion. And I don't think it was obvious enough. I thought it was a catch. It's a shame that it even got to that, because it was a great ball. He should have caught it initially. It was a perfect throw.
Exactly. If you don't want to have this conversation, catch the ball off the initial rip,
I mean, it all goes away if he catches the ball. And all that, I'm sure he's going to beat himself up over it. But at the same time, I'm sure he's going to be like, I caught that ball. And the refs agreed initially and had to sit there and look at a TV screen for a long time before they decided that it wasn't enough. So...
you just got to catch the ball originally. I think if you're taking that long of a replay, it's clearly not conclusive enough evidence to just take it off rip. But that's the world we live in. It didn't go in FSU's favor. I think this really shows the depth of the ACC, though. UVA is a team people should respect, and it was an incredible game. If you missed it, you definitely missed one of the best games so far of the year. Awesome student section by UVA, so even as a hater, I'll give them props. Jumping into our next game we just want to talk about real brief is Oregon State surviving double overtime with Penn State in a game that felt like they were in control of there, and then all of a sudden Penn State came storming back. I will admit I was wrong about two things here. I was wrong about this not being Penn State's whiteout. It was their whiteout. And I was also wrong about Drew Aller and Penn State coming out and playing sharp. Aller did not look sharp. I thought Penn State was going to get a win here. I thought they were going to bail me out there in overtime, but they just weren't able to ride the wave of the home crowd, and they fell once again in a big game in the James Franklin era.
The Ducks keep quacking. And just a quick correction, you said Oregon State. It was, in fact, Oregon.
Oregon, apologies. Wow, I just can't get anything right here.
Big difference between the two.
Yes, very big.
But yeah, the Ducks just went in there and they took care of business on the road in that whiteout game that was confirmed to be the whiteout, which I have a gripe with. I don't like a whiteout game if you're gonna call a whiteout game and do it, wear white. Like why are we?
No,
Like I like in my opinion, you go to home games of teams, and usually the team, most of the crowd is wearing the primary color of the team. Like for JMU, you guys are wearing purple. Most of the time, y'all are wearing purple. Why are we wearing white? And the home team is coming in wearing dark blue with the away team wearing white. I just don't like it in my opinion.
It's
I think
a strategic thing.
No, I understand it, but I think it's a clash. I think you go to a game to wear your team's colors and support them. I love the whiteouts. I think that's one of the greatest things in college football is that whiteout game. But at the same time, wear white. It shouldn't be that difficult.
There's two things with it. The first being that for the home team, you have to wear the darker color unless if the away team agrees. So they would have to have Oregon agree. But second of all, I think the whiteout's whole purpose is to make Penn State stand out, where they're surrounded by white, the opposing team's wearing white. So the contrast of their jerseys, it's supposed to be a strategic thing as well, where they can stand out comparatively, where the opposing teams, when the quarterback's throwing the ball, their receivers get lost in the mix. I think it's just supposed to be a contrast thing, and I don't disagree with you on it. I just, you don't wear white at home.
You could make the argument. You could make that argument the opposite way, where when Penn State has the ball, they can't see the defenders. If Drew
that's fair.
maybe that's why he threw the pick to end the game. He couldn't see the dude under the linebacker
fair.
underneath.
No, that's fair.
So that's always been my biggest gripe with it. Albeit it's still a great tradition. I love that game every year. It's really fun to watch and see, especially when it's against another fantastic team like that, and a top 5 matchup in my books, where Oregon does the job on the road and survives. And got to give a quick shout out to the best name in sports right now, the Oregon kicker. I'm going to say this wrong, Atticus Sappington.
Oh, that's exactly right.
What an electric name.
Shout out Atticus, man. I got nothing more to add to that. What a name. Another great game that happened was Bama and Georgia, where Bama shocked Georgia on the road 24-21. This was a game where Bama, honestly, they came out and punched Georgia in the mouth to start and really had Georgia on their back heel. And Georgia was able to respond in that second half behind their run game, really wearing Bama down, but just couldn't finish the job there in the second half at home.
We were both entirely wrong. We had said that Kirby Smart was just going to dismantle Kalen DeBoer and just outcoach him, but it seemed like it was the opposite way. I mean, I don't know what Kalen DeBoer put in his coffee that morning, but he went out there and outclassed Kirby Smart on his home field, and it was a great game for Alabama there. They absolutely needed that in my books, and I'm sure in their books that was, that's just a huge win for them. Coming off of that early loss to FSU, where they just looked like a horrible team that didn't deserve anything. Now they give themselves a really good chance of fighting back and getting in that favorite spot for a shot at the SEC and a shot at the playoffs. So this is massive for Bama doing it on the road, especially. And they just looked good from start to finish. Georgia did not look bad by any sort of means. I think they started slow, and then ended up biting them in the butt at the end. You got to be able to play from start to finish, and that's what Bama did compared to Georgia. So it's one of those games that it happens. It's still somewhat early in the season. Could this come back to bite Georgia in the butt later? Come conference title game or playoff
could be
time,
a huge decider there.
Yeah, a big head-to-head sort of thing, especially being on the road, which I'll get into a little later in the rankings. So, but gotta bring up the receiver of the week, the big boy catching the ball and churning and burning down the sideline.
Gotta love watching a big man rumble and tumble. A little screen pass out to the offensive tackle. Great stuff. I love it. I mean, that's what football's all about. And I think, speaking of some big decisions, handing the ball to some big people, is think the play or the talking point of this game was if Georgia should have kicked that tying field goal with a little over 9 minutes left instead of going for it, it would have tied the game 24-24. So obviously it would have made a huge difference in the game. It was a very big thing. The play design may be questionable, but if he doesn't get shoelace tackle, he does walk into the end zone on that little running back sweep. I personally, I really can't fault them for going for it. They did get other opportunities. Of their next drive, they had a dropped touchdown right down the seam on a terrible drop pass that really swung momentum there, where despite the not going for the field goal, Georgia still had momentum, got the ball back with good field position, chance to walk in a 45-yard touchdown pass, and just drops it. Hits them right in the bad spot, right in the booger pickers, and it's just, I personally like the aggression of going for it. You still obviously had another opportunity to tie or win that game, and it just didn't work out. But curious to hear how you would have decided in that moment.
I'm all for aggression. I think there's a time and a place for it, of when you go for it, when you don't. In that instance, I think I would swing in the favor of take the points. There's plenty of time left, 9 minutes. They obviously got the ball back. I mean, hindsight. But, take the points, tie the game, and then go from there. Because they had the momentum still. Their defense was playing good. They were getting their stops, and they were getting the ball back. So I think it's a different, aspect of if it, rather than being down 3 still, you're tied, so you can, maybe chew some clock, try to get some get some good spots there, and I mean, obviously the drop pass is killer in that aspect, but it's I think it goes differently if it's tied compared to being down by 3 still, albeit, like you had said, borderline right there from scoring, getting shoelace tackled, and then the drop pass completely swings it. But I still think the script goes a little different if it's tied. They can play a little more conservative knowing it's tied, and knowing that they've almost got Alabama on the ropes there towards the end, where like the momentum was all in Georgia's favor, and then that drop pass just completely kills it. I mean, it could have been different. They could have made Alabama be a little more aggressive, knowing that it's tied now. They can't play as conservative. So I think, in my opinion, at the time it's the wrong decision. I think you take your points there, you tie it up, you give yourself that solid answer of it's tied. Now we can, really dig down and go for this. And I think if they tie it there, I would almost say that they probably go and they win it, purely because of how the momentum was swinging. But it is what it is. Yeah, they made their decision. They had their chances, like you said, so you can't fault them too much.
I agree with the decision to go for it, but you may be right with if they do tie that game, it does end very differently. But I'm all for aggression in football. I think they had momentum behind them. They had been pounding the rock, and that did swing the game. I think that drop pass was a bigger momentum swing to end it, and they just couldn't get past that. But really surprised to hear from you, of all people, you would kick the field goal when I've never seen you kick a field goal in NCAA games when you have 4th and short. I know that halfback direct is coming or something you're going to pull out of the hat.
Well, when you're running the rock like me, of course you're going to go for it 4th and short, dude. I'm putting up 2,000 rushing yards a year, so I'm running that rock just about every time.
Yeah, I can't stand playing you in NCAA. That's why I like to beat up on Will. But speaking of other games that you guys may or may not be interested in, is some other standout games that happened this weekend is Illinois did beat USC 43-32, a big bounce back win for them after getting thumped by Indiana. Tennessee rallied for an overtime win over Mississippi State. They were down most of the game, rallied to win. That is a huge win against a pretty good Mississippi State team. So Tennessee is crawling up people's boards. And Arizona won another tight contest against a ranked TCU team. Really close game. I thought TCU was going to win. I actually had to change my talking points about this because I had already written down my talking points about the game thinking TCU was going to pull it out. And Arizona State really ended up as they've done a lot this year, squeaking by.
I'm with you. I thought TCU was gonna go by, and I was like, all right,
We
another
both
prediction
thought
I
they were
got
going to
right.
win too.
Yeah. It's like another prediction I got right, cool. But then Arizona State, in their typical fashion, just finds a way to squeak it out, and that's good for them. They really need it this early in the season already. So we'll have to see if they can continue that momentum and while they're really starting to dive into conference play. But another big conference game that happened and another upset is Ole Miss knocking off LSU 24-19 in a game I said Ole Miss was going to win, and I was right. Shout out Trinidad Chimbliss. That dude is balling. He is absolutely taking this Ole Miss team to another level. You can tell with all the Trinidad and Tobago flags flying on campus. I'm sure they're wondering why their flags are sold out everywhere now, but it's purely because of one player and his first name. But yeah, Ole Miss just looked like the better team there.
I think the score was closer than what the game actually was.
Absolutely, yeah. I loved Lane Kiffin's response to making Weeks throw up, and they were like, what do you have to do to make this guy throw up like this? And he said tempo, and that's absolutely right, because he did the same thing against Tulane, where he started the first half. Their offense was run a play. 5 seconds later, they're lining up. They're going. They're constantly on a hurry up in that first half. They want to get out to that big lead, and then in the second half, they can dial it back. And it seems like that formula is very much working for them right now. With the pace that their offense is going, they're ready for it. They're willing to do it, and then the defense is getting the much-needed stops. So Ole Miss is definitely a team to be reckoned with right now, believe it or not. I can't believe I just said that, so...
It was a good game for Ole Miss. They're definitely getting a lot more respect from voters, including our voters. And then, since it's our podcast, got to talk about our teams here. JMU took care of Georgia Southern 35-10 in a game that we really just pounded the rock. Over 300 rushing yards, 2 running backs eclipsing 130, a kickoff return touchdown. JMU really was clicking on all cylinders. So they got some big matchups coming up. Definitely staring ODU down the barrel here in a few weeks. But they're in a great spot. Great game for JMU. I was very happy with the result.
Always love to see it. The battle for Virginia looks like it's getting a little tighter now with UVA pulling off an upset. So it'd be great. It would be awesome to be able to see them play. Maybe if we're lucky, we could get a bowl game between them or something like that. But we'll have to see how it pans out. Yeah, but of course, like you said, our podcast, our rules. I'm going to hit on Tulane handling Tulsa on the road 31-14. I thought this was a big bounce back game for the defense after they got manhandled by the Ole Miss offense. They caused 2 turnovers. They did get caught by a surprise onside kick. After Tulsa had made it 14-14, I believe, they came out, surprised onside, recovered it, and I was like, oh no, this isn't good. They're gaining the momentum. They had just tied the game. We're on the road, albeit there was maybe 20 people in the stands. But there was still, I was like, they got all the momentum. Their coach was fired up. I was like, this doesn't look good. But then they got the stop when they really needed it the most and then never looked back. They manhandled them in that second half and just made it look like they're just a tier above, as they are, in my opinion. It really gives them a good shot or a good start in the conference with a road win. And then I want to shout out the running back, Javin Gordon, true freshman, I believe, 3 touchdowns on the day. So good to see him, because our running back room is a little confusing with, who's the 1, who's the 2 sort of thing. It's kind of just play the hot hand right now. And, especially when Retzloff is still the leading rusher. So
exactly.
I still think that they're a team to be reckoned with, and they'll be back close to the rankings sooner rather than later, especially with their loss turning into a high-quality lesson now.
It's a great lesson on the road against Ole Miss. So without further ado, though, we want to talk about the teams that are ranked right now with our rankings breakdown. Going to focus a little bit more than we typically do on these and really go into the weeds of why we have certain players in teams in certain positions. So as always, want to mention our criteria off the top. And there was a little controversy within the Dynasty Dummies community, us five, with how things should be outlined and valued. But we value head to head. We value that we do not bring in hypotheticals. We really care about these weekly results, and that ultimately we're going to go with the team's vibe too, and how their results really shape up the rankings. So, Tony, without further ado, if you want to show the crowd our rankings, it is definitely a lot of movement, especially from my side, I think, with a lot of new teams being added. But just jumping right into the start of mine, I've kept Miami at my number one slot here, while Oregon jumps up to number two. I really debated this one for a long time, but I decided to stick with Miami here.
Yeah, one thing immediately gonna point out on your side here is good old Penn State. Our friends up there in Pennsylvania in their whiteout game, losing in overtime to your now number two team and getting completely dropped out. That's definitely stirred a bunch of controversy within our group. And I'm sure will stir controversy everywhere else. So I got to hear a solid explanation for this one.
I recognize that I'm definitely probably the only person in the country that doesn't have Penn State, Texas, or even LSU, any of those three teams ranked. They've all dropped from my rankings. Texas was 16 for me last week, LSU 9, Penn State was top 5. And I really had to do some self-reflection this week on how I value teams and what it means to be a good team this early in the season. And I will fully recognize that these three teams are three of the best teams in the country, but ultimately tough choices needed to be made for me, and they were chopped. And those tough choices were the quality of the wins, and quite frankly, the best reason I could find to rank Texas, Penn State, and LSU was that they had a quality loss. And I cannot justify ranking a team if their best attribute is a quality loss to a good team. Texas and Penn State have yet to have a Power 4 win. LSU was the closest to staying in my rankings with their win over Florida, but I just couldn't justify keeping these teams, and including Penn State, dropping all the way out after just not having the wins needed. Now, that being said, here in a couple weeks, I'm sure that they're going to be back in my rankings as things shift and they get some good wins, but I can't rank them solely based off of brand reputation and knowing that they have a good roster. But what I care about is what has the results that have happened on the field, not the hypothetical of how good their team could be.
You're right. I mean, I'm with you in the boat of that. You know, Penn State specifically, I have a personal agenda against them, albeit they are still ranked for me. But they are definitely they're like a top 10 merchant almost, where like they're just there because they're Penn State. And it's like they don't have anything. James, like I've said in the preview episode, James Franklin can't get it done. He never has, and quite frankly, it looks like he never will. And they don't really have those quality wins in a big conference where there's a lot of quality teams. So far, at least. I mean, obviously that could change, but they're very much, tiptoeing that line right now of should they be ranked, should they not be ranked. And I know you pulled the trigger and said, screw you guys, you're dropped. I still a little insane they go from 5 to unranked, but I understand the reasoning behind it. But I
Look,
do see you do
I'm not
have
100% happy with my rankings. I don't mean that with the final result, but I'm not. I look at it, and there's definitely some teams that I think are top 25 worthy that I don't have ranked, but I think that me not being 100% satisfied is a good thing, because I'm not just sticking those teams I like in, but actually putting in teams that are deserving based off of our and my own personal value of our criteria.
Yeah, I mean, it's right. It's how it goes. I do see here that you have what is this? 6 new teams joining your rankings here. That's I think that's the most out of everyone.
It definitely is, and a big part of that is the Texas, Penn State, and LSU being dropped from my rankings. Ultimately, it's definitely a little wishy-washy where I had Texas moving up last week, and then I all of a sudden drop them. But like I said, I had to really go to my ayahuasca tent and think about how these teams should be ranked, and they just didn't speak to me enough. And because of that, a lot of new teams got in, and there's 20 undefeated teams left in college football, and I think that you should be deserved to be undefeated. So I had UVA, Bama, Mizzou, Houston, UNLV, North Texas, and Illinois join, with the only undefeated team that did not make my cut being Navy. They're the 26th team looking out. But I had to bring in Bama, of course, for beating Georgia. And Illinois was on the fence after their loss to Indiana and dropping out. And they get a ranked win against a USC team. So I did bring them back into the rankings, but it was a bit challenging to do so. I have brought in Houston, UNLV, and North Texas, and Mizzou. They're undefeated. They deserve to be in. And UVA is going to take a huge jump after knocking off FSU, which brings me to a point in our rankings where we both have the UVA, FSU, Bama, Georgia combo in a row here. I do have all of them ranked just one higher than you here. But I think this was something you and I agreed pretty firmly about, in the sense that UVA beat Florida State beat Bama, Bama beat Georgia, and since they all have a similar one-loss resume, this was the order they were going to be in, despite UVA's loss to NC State, which I do think is a pretty decent team besides their 2 losses. It's something that I felt was the correct order, but curious to hear why you had them in this 4 in a row style ranking as well.
I'm with you there on, the logistical way of thinking of it is UVA beat FSU, FSU beat Bama, Bama beat Georgia, and then for me I added Tennessee in there because they were still ranked for me. So I had to do a lot of soul searching as well, and really crack down on this criteria, and like head to head is pretty key for me. I hate the whole it's like weekly results obviously are very important because that's what changes how everything flows, but you cannot take away a week 1 win compared to a week 10 win. So, they don't mean any more or any less.
I agree.
So, I think a week 1 win for FSU over Bama is just as important as Bama's win this past week against Georgia. So, albeit, Bama's could be slightly more important purely because it's conference, but nonetheless, you can't say Bama would beat Florida State because they didn't. So
you can't think about it of what if they played now. Well, they did play week 1, and football is not a game of hypotheticals. It's you get that chance to beat the team one time, and if you don't if you don't win and you lose, guess what? You weren't the better team, and that's the result you got to stick with. I don't care if it happened week 1, just like you said.
If football is one of the only sports in the entire world where it's a one-off sport where you get one shot. Many other sports, they especially playoff time, it's usually a series best of. Football, you'll never ever see that. It's always going to be one-off. Do you show up on the day? Do you perform? And like you said, week 1, Florida State did, Bama didn't. So be it. That's what it is. But I'm not going to take away Florida State beating a Bama team who was ranked 8 at the time, I believe, week 1 in the AP poll. And Florida State was unranked. They were not even close to being considered for top 25 or anything like that. So it was a massive game at the time that Florida State proved they belong. So I'm taking that throughout the entire season. Unless something else happens that trumps it, which I doubt. It's gonna stay like that. I can't realistically rank Florida State above Alabama. Albeit
if Florida State loses this week to Miami,
if they drop,
then it changes. The resumes aren't as equal. But if they're both sitting at one loss, I have to take the team that won in the head-to-head. I don't care what week it occurred in. I have to respect that result. And that was what I think the big controversy between the Dynasty Dummies is that does the more recent weekly result matter more than that week 1 win? And I think in this scenario where you have teams that played head to head and have the same resume, that win does matter. If Florida State drops a game and they're sitting at 2 losses, okay, then maybe you're giving the edge to Bama. But if Bama drops another game, I'm putting FSU ahead of them again, because that head-to-head to me is the most important thing. That is the results mattering in the most significant way.
Absolutely. I mean, if you my biggest thing is that if you put up 2 blind resumes, and one being FSU, one being Bama, and you say this is their stats, this is their records and whatnot, but this team beat this team, I'm giving the edge to this team. They beat the other team. So like if I looked at these 2 blindly, same record, give or take the same resume, they both have a loss, but the one team's loss is to the other team, I'm giving the edge to the team that beat them because they beat them fair and square. So there's nothing you can do around it, ifs, ands, or buts for it. So that's how it's going to be unless things change. That's how it'll be. I will say I made a note. I was very conflicted to vote for UVA or rank them. I was doing my rankings, and this was easily the hardest ranking so far. Every single one of us out of all the dummies, we all sat there and we had to think, and we were all saying, like, this is easily the hardest we've ever had to do because of what's going on. I really struggled to rank UVA. I really didn't think that winning at home in overtime with slight controversy, I'm not going to say like it completely tipped the game, but slight controversy doesn't give you that guaranteed ranking in my book. But they did get the job done. They did beat a top 10 team in my rankings, so I got to give them respect. But they're gonna have to keep it up to stay anywhere close.
They'll have a tough matchup against Louisville this weekend. That's going to be a huge game for the ACC. But I think UVA deserves the respect. They are a quality team before the win against FSU. They just have been flying under the radar. They are quality. I think that's going to be a great matchup to watch this coming weekend. But I don't think we can say it any more before beating a dead horse. Where we just this has been a very challenging week to do the rankings for sure. And you had mentioned controversies. A team for me that didn't get to move in my rankings because of controversy was Georgia Tech. If you missed that game against Wake Forest has the ball 3rd down, 3rd and 5 at their own 30. Georgia Tech could not have been more offsides if you wrote a movie about this. They were extremely far offsides, and a flag was not thrown. And what happened was that Wake Forest had to punt the ball. Georgia Tech went down, scored. They ended up winning the game. So it was a game that if the refs make the right call, Georgia Tech doesn't win that game and they lose. However, they did win the game. They can't control the refs, so I'm not going to punish them for getting some ref help, but I'm not going to reward them either. So I had to keep them firm at 13. I did not feel comfortable moving them up despite a bunch of shifts above them. I thought that was a game that they technically lost. They just got lucky, and they're definitely going to have to prove themselves. They were closer to dropping in rankings than moving up for me personally.
No, I'm with you there. Like, I think the main reason they moved up for me is just purely because of all the other people that dropped. It made it almost kind of hard to keep them in the same spot without, causing more conflict within myself. I had them move up to 11, just 2 spots. And, the controversy is the controversy. Like you said, there's nothing they can do to control that. That's on the refs. So that's, they went out, they played the game, they ended up winning the game. You can put an asterisk next to it, but it's still a W nonetheless. So another thing, with them is they got to keep going. Like these closer games are not helping them a lot. They're still winning, which is great, but I need to see something convincing before they can start, slowly falling, albeit still undefeated, still gaining their respect, still going to stay ranked so far unless they, blow it up. But I'm going to need to start seeing some convincing stuff, especially when we get into this conference play and what we now know as a deep ACC, where the winner is very much a question mark right now, or you probably couldn't point out who's going to come out on top in the ACC. So they're definitely
any
one of
man's
those teams
to win.
Yeah, so a couple other
Another.
teams that. No, go ahead.
Oh no, all you, all you.
Two other teams for me and my side that are almost in the same boat as Georgia Tech is Penn State and Texas. I still have them ranked, albeit they are walking a very, very fine line of being dropped altogether. This was Penn State's time to prove that they belong, and albeit it was a very close game, but they couldn't get it done at home. And that's big for me. I had noticed, I know one question you had brought up in our notes here is why I put Oregon number one. And for me, it's purely they did their job. They got out. They went and got the win. And for me, it's heavy emphasis on the road aspect. I think I value these, especially when it's a ranked matchup on the road. I value those wins slightly higher than if it was at home. You're going into a super hostile environment, especially a whiteout game for Penn State where, it was never quiet once until they lost the game. So I value those road wins, conference wins as well on the road, slightly higher. So there's probably, the thinnest margin between them and Miami right now. But Miami has a chance to, take it back this weekend with their game. So that's basically the reason I got Oregon jumping up to 1 and Miami at 2. But I could honestly put them tied for 1, and I'd be okay with that. But I
agree.
I gotta have a person up top and someone right below. But I gave them the edge by the thinnest of margins.
I really have no problem with Oregon being number 1. I really debated that for a while myself, and I decided to stick with Miami. To me, it was kind of one of those things like the tie goes to the runner in baseball. Miami already held the slot. Thought both teams were 1A, 1B scenario, and I stuck with Miami. Oregon, though, if they pull out the win against Indiana this week, they will most definitely be my new number 1. It will be a huge win for them, and they'll really lock in that 1 spot for me. Speaking of the top 5 here, a team that jumped up huge for both of us was Ole Miss. I have them jumping up 14 spots from 20 all the way to 6, which is definitely a huge jump, and they jumped some other undefeated SEC teams for myself that I had ranked ahead of them. And quite frankly, I when I really sat down and thought about how I was ranking teams, Ole Miss was a team that I thought has been playing really well and has some impressive wins, and I had to give them a huge jump despite beating LSU after I drop LSU. Just because a team is unranked doesn't mean that a team is bad. You can have a win against an unranked team and be a quality win. Ole Miss, for me, I think they're the best SEC team right now. At least they're playing the best right now. So I did jump them up to that 6th spot. It was definitely a huge decision for me, but I felt good about it with where the rest of the teams ended up falling.
Yeah, I mean, I'm around the same. I had them jump up 9 spots to 5. I'm with you. I think right now they're playing the best football in the SEC. I would say it's kind of tight there. I mean, I got A&M at 7, Oklahoma 9, Vandy 10, and all 3 of those teams are right there with each other. So this week, we'll go over it in our preview episode. But with Vandy playing Alabama, will drastically shake things up. But when we get into these, rough and tough last weeks of conference play, everything is going to get shaken. It's going to change absolutely everything. Ole Miss could do this, and then they go and lose, 1 or 2 games, and they could be gone altogether. But I'm with you on that. I think Ole Miss is a team to be reckoned with. I think I don't want to say they're the favorite right now in the SEC, but they are definitely one of the hottest teams.
I think they might be the hottest team in college football. A huge reason for that is Trinidad. He is playing lights out. Me personally, he should be the starting quarterback for the rest of the year, without a doubt. He has been playing lights out, and there's a reason why the Ole Miss faithful are buying all these flags from Trinidad and Tobago. Another question I had for you, though, is I have Texas Tech up here at 4, Iowa State at 7, while I see you have Iowa State at 6, Texas Tech at 8. Wanted to see your thoughts. These are, I think, the unanimous top two Big 12 teams right now. What is your reasoning for their positioning? As someone who I think Texas Tech does have the edge on Iowa State, curious to hear your thoughts on why you're giving it to Iowa State.
Yeah, that's another one of those very, very close sort of things. I think those two teams are probably your better ones in the Big 12 right now. I think I'm giving the edge to Iowa State because they have those better. I don't want to say better wins because I mean Texas Tech does have great wins as well. But winning an early conference game week 0 in a different country is always massive against K-State. They do beat Iowa as well at home. And then kind of throttling Arizona.
That was an impressive win.
Very impressive win in my eyes where, Arizona was undefeated. So
this is definitely something I'm going to want to talk about with the AP poll as well. So you're reading my mind here.
Yeah, so it's definitely something that I took into consideration here. I thought that they will have the slightest edge over Texas Tech right now. I think that could change absolutely drastically. But, Texas Tech's best win is coming against Utah, which will be a great win, especially on the road. But their other games aren't shaping up as well as Iowa State's, I think, right now. I think Iowa State's wins so far are weighing a little more than Texas Tech's, but that could drastically change in the next couple of weeks because they're both going to run into some pretty tough opponents in their conference. So it's very, very, very close in my book, but I'm giving the edge to Iowa State because I think right now if we want to say it, their strength of record is higher in my books compared to Texas Tech's.
Both teams have some tough tests coming up this week. Texas Tech on the road against an undefeated Houston team, and Iowa State's going to be traveling to Cincinnati to face the Bearcats, who are 3-1. And actually, I think they're the betting favorites right now. So, no joke for either of these teams. I respect your reason why. I think both of these teams are deserving. One last thing I want to touch about on my own personal rankings, and this is actually the three teams I had the hardest time with, and it was Arizona, Tennessee, and Mississippi State. I had Arizona State ranked last week. They get a ranked win over TCU and then proceed to fall out of my rankings. This is the one I felt the most disgusted about, and really the reason why I'm a little unhappy with my rankings, but I think it's a good thing because it's me sticking to my principles. Arizona State lost to Mississippi State. They both have a similar resume. I think Mississippi State, if I'm going to rank Arizona State, I have to put Mississippi State in front of them by at least one spot, and I didn't feel comfortable ranking Mississippi State. And in turn, Tennessee just knocked off Mississippi State, and I am not ready to rank Tennessee yet either. I couldn't rank all three of these. I couldn't rank Arizona and rank the other two. So by my own rules, Arizona State is not deserving of a top 25 slot. I do think they'll be appearing in my poll very soon as the season shapes out. But I think they're probably the team to watch most closely on the outside of all of our rankings. Just because of how this week shaped out, I think Arizona State kind of got the short end of the stick. But it was a very... I spent a lot of time on these three teams and ultimately decided that none of them could be ranked if this is how I felt about it.
Live by the criteria, die by the criteria. It hurts.
That's what I had to do.
Yeah, it hurts sometimes because there's a team you really want to put in, but then when you go through our guidelines that we basically run through, it's like, well, can't really do it because like you said, with a Mississippi State that's right there, you'd have to rank them, if and whatnot, and then Tennessee as well, you throw into that mix, and it's just that unending circle of this team beat this team, this team beat this team sort of thing. It's extremely hard. This is not an easy thing to do. As much as we bash the AP and all of them, this is not easy to do whatsoever, but I think ours comes with a little more integrity, I would say. So
I hope.
Yeah, I would hope. But, at least we're open and willing to discuss and explain why, these AP voters, they just throw in a ballot and they just hide, basically, and don't, do anything about it. But Just one thing just to touch quickly on mine really quick before we move on is I have 4 teams I think are on the cusp. I could probably throw in a handful more, but 4 teams specifically. I'm right there with you with Navy. They are very close. They're probably next in line for me. UNLV is also extremely close, probably just behind Navy. And then I'm keeping an eye on our 2 teams in Tulane and JMU. I think that they've done enough right now to get themselves back into the conversation at minimum, and their losses are turning into good quality lessons, especially Tulane's a little biased, but a now surging Ole Miss team, and I mean Louisville is just as good. I mean they have a chance to really prove themselves this week as well. So it's looking good for our 2 teams here. I mean if unless one of these losses from our 2 stumble at the end and they can win out, it's going to be a tough little decision there. But like we had discussed before this, where the American is turning into a absolute just slugfest between teams. I mean, I was looking at the schedule earlier today for a bunch of the teams, and it's favoring Tulane right now. And the only other team they play is Memphis out of these top American teams. While Memphis is playing, they play South Florida, I believe, and I want to say Navy. And then like North Texas plays Navy, Memphis, South Florida, and they're all going to go at each other. So it's definitely favoring my Green Wave, which I'm looking forward to. But they're definitely going to have to keep an eye on our 2 teams because I think sooner rather than later they could end up back in the conversation for the G5 spot.
I think, and hey, remember, it's not a G5 spot. It's the 5th highest ranked champion. Boise State was the 3rd highest ranked champion last year. So it's not
Correct.
Group of 5 teams can make it as conference champions if the cards fall right.
Absolutely.
Maybe we get a Tulane JMU playoff bid. But I think those are some great teams. Some great teams to keep an eye out for. I'm still, like I said, Texas, Penn State, LSU, still great teams. So I'm watching them closely. In addition to Tennessee, Mississippi, Arizona State, and keeping my eye on Tulane, JMU, and ODU as some other group of 5 teams on the verge here. But I think we talked about our rankings enough here. I think the people probably want to see the group rankings stacked up against the AP poll. So, Tony, hit them with it.
Yep, so this is now the AP and our collective group rankings. It's a lot of movement, at least on our side, because ours are ever changing. While the AP, you see a lot of dashes of no movement, which some of them very controversial and whatnot. But we will get into that. First, just going to go into who dropped, who joined. On the AP side, who dropped out? USC, TCU. On our side, Mississippi State drops out, USC drops out, Texas drops out, and TCU drops out. While the people joining, the AP is UVA joining, and then Arizona State getting their spot back. While on our side of things, Alabama jumps in at 13, believe it or not. UVA jumps up to 16, and then Maryland and Houston round out the top 25.
I think you see a lot of movement from ours here I think this week really showed, or at least made a lot of us realize how we have to be ranking teams moving forward. So this was a big shift in where people were putting people or teams overall. And I think you saw another week where the consensus as a group was it was tighter than the AP poll. The AP poll teams receiving votes are USF, Utah, Mississippi State, Memphis, Louisville, USC, Maryland, North Texas, TCU, and UNLV, where a lot of these teams are actually already ranked by us, that being USF, Memphis, Louisville, Maryland, North Texas, and UNLV here. Or, not UNLV, sorry. They're right on the outside. But we had 4 teams receiving votes. North Texas, which actually was tied with Houston with 18 votes for the 25th slot. A little insight on how we determine tiebreakers is whichever team is individually ranked higher in a ballot, if they are tied, gets the nod. So if Houston in this week's ballot had the highest rank of 14, while North Texas had the highest rank of 18. So Houston got the nod into the rankings. And then we also had UNLV getting 14 votes, Texas 9, and Illinois 2. So a good round out here. It's pretty tight against the Dynasty Dummies. I think more of the conversation is how you rank the teams that we do feel are top 25. And I know even the top 5, we were split for the number 1 team. It was a very close race. Miami had 3 of the 5 votes, while Oregon had 2. So it really came down to the last poll being submitted. And the Blitz pulled through just in time.
Good old Roof Blitz pulling through in last-second rankings, but nonetheless, they all matter. Our group, it's really gonna start showing how we rank these teams and why we rank them. I mean, we have our own little discourse of we try to explain. We all question each other and try and get a rhyme or reason out of it, but. It's constantly going to change. We're willing to make those big changes, unlike the AP, where they continue having issues. And a big thing that they're doing is just disrespecting the Big 12. It looks like I can't stand how high Texas and Penn State are still. Again, 0 P4 wins, and we're going into week 7, I think, right? Or week 6.
6.
Yeah, we're going into week 6. They have 0 P4 wins. Just a disgrace that they're ranked that high. And you got teams like Texas Tech and Iowa State that are just performing, doing their job, playing actual teams, and they just can't seem to sway the minds. And a big thing with that too is the AP voters that are Big 12 like beat writers. They don't favor their own teams. Like usually when it comes
the
to
other conference beat writers clearly do.
Exactly, and when you have you're a beat writer for like let's say Texas Tech for example. You're a beat writer for them. You're around them constantly. Why wouldn't you favor them a little? That's why you get them from all these different schools and teams and whatnot, so that you can take in a little bias, but at the same time you're still doing your job. And it just
teams
seems
are all
like there's
receiving bias that way.
Yeah,
But
and like
now
there's always going to
it's
be
not
bias,
working.
but now it just seems like it's going away, especially for the Big 12, where they're just not getting as much respect as they should. And we saw that last year come playoff time, where there was a big question mark over the Big 12, and were they even going to get in at one point when the American was looking pretty good at the end of the season, but then kind of collapsed there at the end. So I don't know if it's just they hate the Big 12 for some reason since the realignment, but something has got to change, and they have got to somehow give the respect that they are very much due.
I agree. I think you mentioned it earlier, but Iowa State beat down an undefeated Arizona team, and they didn't even move. They stayed at 14 in the AP poll. I think that's ludicrous. You beat a good, solid team like Arizona like that, you should move up, especially with Georgia, Penn State, LSU falling. And Texas Tech still only being at 11, I think, is crazy. These teams, this is what happened last year with the Big 12, too. The best Big 12 teams were barely cracking the top 10. That way, at the end of the season, they only had to insert one into the college football playoff. And it's crazy to me that a team like Texas Tech and Iowa State aren't at least one of them isn't in the top 10 of the AP poll yet. Whereas ours, you have both of them, deservingly so. And it really baffles me. I think another one that we still are not crazy on is how Notre Dame is still ranked in the AP poll. Notre Dame falls in the same category as Penn State, Texas for me. Great team. I mean, they have a better win in Arkansas than either of those teams, but no team with 2 losses should be ranked right now, in my opinion. There's way too many teams that are undefeated or just have 1 loss that are ahead of them in my book. It still baffles me that they can be ranked after starting 0-2, but it's more important in today's world to be the name brand than the brand that's actually winning games.
It's absurd. I mean, you have them that started 0-2, and even when they were 0-2, they were still ranked. And you had teams like a Tulane, like a JMU, and like at the time, You got a team like Memphis right now, North Texas, Navy, you name it. These other teams that are so much more deserving than a Notre Dame team that finally gets a solid win, and they seem like they're on the right track, but purely because of that brand name, and they're not going to drop out unless they go defeated the entire season. Realistically, I could have seen them going 0-3 and somehow staying in, honestly, at this rate. So it's absurd nonetheless, and I can't stand it that a lot of it now it seems like it's purely due to brand recognition. You know, a team like a Penn State, like I had said, where their best win is what? FIU maybe? Nevada? Like, you tell me. And then you got a team like a Texas where their best win is UTEP? Sam Houston, maybe? Like, serious, like, you can't. It's the argument of, you know, like how we were talking about Iowa State and Texas Tech over the edge, but in the sense of look at just Iowa State compared to those two teams, like, why are they below them when they have much more P4 wins? They have a P4 win nonetheless. And one was against a ranked team, week 0, in a different country nonetheless. And they continue to get the job done and win. So it's like, it baffles me how it gets to this point where, I mean, even a team like Bama, where they were continued to stay ranked after that abysmal loss week 1, and then they weren't getting any, you know, marquee wins, but then they finally get one, and now all of a sudden they're top 10. So it's absurd nonetheless. The bias is always going to be there. I am kind of a proponent of, I don't think Ohio State deserves the 1 spot anymore. They haven't done enough. They don't have, I mean, barring the Texas win, which is still, to me, aging like milk because Texas still doesn't look that great. They don't really have anything. I would 100% put Oregon, Miami over them. I'd almost borderline put Ole Miss over them. So I think
that might be going a little too far. I think Ohio State.
It's close. It's close. I'm not saying Ohio State's bad.
I know. I think I will listen to any argument for Ohio State, Oregon, and Miami. I think those 3 are the top 3 clear cut for me. Ole Miss might be pushing my safe space boundaries a little bit too much, but I hear you out. I hear you out. I know.
I hate it.
I think another bias thing is actually against your team with Tulane. You know, Illinois is ranked again, and they lost by 53 to Indiana. They did get a ranked win over USC, but Tulane doesn't even have a single vote, and they lost to number 4 Ole Miss by 35. Obviously, you know, you rather have a great win than a great lesson for both of these teams, especially in Tulane's case. But to not even receive a vote is pretty crazy. They didn't receive a vote in the Dynasty Dummy rankings, but there's only 5 of us, and they're definitely a team on the verge. I just, you know, I think that P4 G5 bias now.
Yeah, it's showing the bias of it. It's absurd in my opinion. I want to give a shout out to Herd Bros on Twitter, who I saw them tweet this and made me bring it up. Is you had mentioned it, Illinois beat USC by 2, Duke by 26, beat Western Michigan, and beat an FCS team, but lost by 53 to now number 8 Indiana on the road. Okay, they get ranked 22. You know what? Cool. Whatever. Tulane, they beat Duke by 7, albeit common opponent. Illinois got it by a little more. But again, I think in that Tulane game, the score didn't reflect the game as much. Beat another P4 team in Northwestern by 20, who, by the way, Oregon only beat by 20. And then beat a South Alabama, which, okay, Sun Belt team, and then a conference team in Tulsa on the road. And then they lose by 35 to a number 4 now, Ole Miss, in the AP. And they get 0. I mean, I didn't want to... Probably the main reason I didn't rank Tulane, obviously, in my opinion, is the bias in it. I know I would get called out for the bias. I think they're damn close because, again, that loss is turning into a golden loss at this rate. And it just, you know, Ole Miss is just the hottest team, like you said, the hottest team in college football right now. So losing to them as a G5, not necessarily that bad. So, again, and it was on the road as well. So going into a tough environment there, that LSU couldn't even handle. And I had seen another tweet that statistically, the game, albeit didn't look the same, but statistically Tulane did perform better than LSU did on the road at Ole Miss. So the score is obviously different. I think that was a game where the score didn't reflect how, a little lopsided that game was, but it's the disrespect is absurd to the G5 as a whole. They should definitely get more recognition as a whole. And I'm not even, just even as a Tulane fan, obviously, I'm going to say it. You as a JMU fan are obviously going to say it. Mm-hmm. And we all want to see more G5 get involved because it makes it's better for the sport, I think, to have these quote unquote smaller teams in it. It gives them recognition. It creates a bigger playing field for everybody, and it creates more fun. And who wouldn't love to see a power team come to a G5 in the playoff? Like, that would be so fun. Are you kidding me?
God,
could you imagine, just close your eyes and think. It's December. It's the first round of the playoffs. It's cold in Harrisonburg. JMU is hosting, I don't know, Penn State. I mean,
Imagine
it could literally
Penn State
be any
coming to little Harrisonburg.
Penn State. It could be an SEC team. It could be a Big 12. It could be any one of those P4. I don't care who it is. But
unfortunately,
a team like
I think
a JMU
it'll be a cold
hosting.
day in hell before that happens.
Yeah, probably, especially come playoff ranking time. So, I mean, we saw it last year with the continued disrespect of Boise State. And I mean, albeit they did end up, getting that bye. But then you could argue that this is the reason that it got changed. People were like, why the hell are they getting one and not other teams that finished with a better record and whatnot? And, I liked it initially with valuing that winning your conference because I think that takes precedence.
I think each
That's
round
the
they should have
games.
just reseeded like the NFL does. Instead of it being set, the number one team, Oregon, for last year's bracket, instead of playing – who was it, the winner of Ohio State or Tennessee, they just play the lowest remaining team left, which actually might have been Ohio State either way. I'm not sure. I can't remember off the top of my head. But
I can't either.
I might have to eat my own words on that one. But it's a difficult thing. I think group of 5 teams deserve a chance to play, especially the best of the best. The best group of 5 teams are better than any mid-level Power 4 team without a doubt, and deserve a chance to have a Cinderella story, because I think that's what makes sports so great, especially college sports, having that huge upset loss happen. I mean, like the UVA Florida State game this weekend. That's a game that'll be talked about for years. I mean, ironically, UVA was wearing 1995 throwbacks from when they last upset a top 10 Florida State team, and then they wear those throwbacks and do it again. And people will talk about this game for another 20, 30 years. So that's just how sports make a difference. I think it's important. But these are our rankings. I feel like even looking at our Dynasty Dummy rankings, I'm not 100% sold on them. I can't believe that somehow we have Bam all the way up at 13. It's looking at my poll and seeing how everyone else ranks teams, it really stands out to me. And I think that's why I love doing it. Instead of just my poll, it's other people's getting incorporated, and we get to see that sense of how we would rate teams stacked up with the AP poll. But that's what we have for you guys with our poll. So tell us what you guys think. Let us know what you think, what teams we have too high, what teams we have too low, where you think we made a real big goof, where you think the AP voters got something right. Always want to hear from you guys, so let us know what you want to see from us next time. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Dynasty Dummies, and don't forget to follow our personal accounts too, HunterShaw_5 and CronyTony20.
We will see you all later this week for the preview episode.